He has ruled one of the most powerful nations on Earth for over 2 decades. World leaders have called him brilliant, others have called him dangerous. Some have called him both. But who is Vladimir Putin? Where did he come from? How did a quiet boy from a crumbling Soviet apartment block become the man who reshapes global politics with a single phone call? Today, we're breaking it all down. His childhood, his KGB past, his rise to the top, and what he actually wants. This is the full story of Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born on October 7, 1952 in Leningrad, the city we now call St. Petersburg. He wasn't born into power or privilege. Far from it. His family lived in a communal apartment, one bathroom shared with several other families. His father was a factory worker and Soviet Navy conscript. His mother worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. Leningrad had survived one of the most devastating sieges in history during World War II, nearly 900 days of blockade by Nazi forces. Putin grew up hearing those stories. That trauma shaped the city, and the city shaped him. As a kid, Putin was small, scrappy. He got into street fights regularly. By his own admission, he was not a model student, but he was determined. That determination led him to something that would change his entire life: martial arts. He began training in Sambo, a Soviet combat sport, and later judo. He earned his black belt and competed at the city level. Discipline, patience, strategy. These weren't just skills he learned in sport. They became his entire personality. And then, as a teenager, he became obsessed with something else entirely: spy movies. He later said that Soviet spy films made him want to serve his country as an intelligence officer. So at 16 years old, he walked into the KGB office in Leningrad and asked how to join. They told him to get a law degree first. So he did. In 1975, Putin graduated from Leningrad State University with a law degree and immediately joined the KGB, the Soviet Union's feared secret intelligence agency. He trained in counterintelligence and foreign intelligence. He worked in Leningrad for years, monitoring foreigners and gathering information. He wasn't a flashy double-agent spy like you see in movies. He was methodical, disciplined, patient. In 1985, he got his big assignment, East Germany. He was sent to Dresden, where he worked undercover recruiting informants and gathering intelligence on Western agencies during the height of the Cold War. By most accounts, he wasn't the most decorated officer. He wasn't running glamorous operations, but he was learning something invaluable: how power worked, how information was leveraged, how fear and loyalty could be manufactured. Then in 1989, everything collapsed. The Berlin Wall fell, East Germany crumbled, and Putin watched from Dresden as the Soviet empire he had dedicated his life to began to disintegrate. There are reports that he personally burned KGB documents to keep them from falling into the wrong hands. By his own account, Putin felt abandoned. He called Moscow for instructions. The response? Silence. Moscow was paralyzed. The Soviet Union was dying. That moment never left him. On he returned to Russia, feeling like his country had been humiliated on the world stage. And he made himself a promise: it would never happen again. Back in Russia, Putin officially retired from the KGB in 1991, the same year the Soviet Union formally collapsed. But he didn't fade away. He returned to St. Petersburg and went to work for the city's mayor, Anatoly Sobchak, a democratic reformer. Putin managed foreign investment and economic relations. He was efficient, loyal, and quietly impressive. Then came his move to Moscow. In 1996, he joined the Kremlin administration under President Boris Yeltsin. He rose quickly, first as head of the FSB, Russia's successor to the KGB, and then as prime minister in 1999. Russia at this time was a mess. The economy had collapsed. Corruption was rampant. His organized crime controlled entire industries. Ordinary Russians felt humiliated. Their country had gone from superpower to economic basket case in less than a decade. And then, apartment bombings rocked Moscow and other Russian cities. Hundreds were killed. The Kremlin blamed Chechen separatists and launched a brutal military campaign. Putin was front and center, tough, decisive, promising to eliminate the terrorists. His approval ratings went through the roof. On December 31st, 1999, Boris Yeltsin did something shocking. He resigned on national television and named Vladimir Putin as acting president of Russia. Putin was elected president in March 2000. He was 47 years old. Most Western leaders thought he would be manageable, a technocrat, a modernizer. They were wrong. From the moment he took power, Putin moved systematically to consolidate control. Independent media outlets were shut down or bought out by Kremlin-friendly oligarchs. Political opponents found themselves facing criminal charges, exile, or worse. But on the surface, Russia was booming. Oil prices were high. The economy was growing. For millions of ordinary Russians, life was genuinely getting better. Putin got the credit. He served 2 terms as president. Then, when the constitution blocked a 3rd consecutive term, he became prime minister while his close ally Dmitry Medvedev held the presidency. Then, in 2012, he returned to the Kremlin as president again. Internationally, tensions grew. NATO expansion eastward infuriated Putin. He saw it as a broken promise, a direct threat to Russia's sphere of influence. Or then came the turning point the world is still living with. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea, a part of Ukraine, after a popular uprising in Kiev ousted a pro-Russian president. The world was shocked. Sanctions hit Russia, but Putin's approval ratings at home soared. And then, in February 2022, he launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the largest land war in Europe since World War II. The world watched in disbelief. The United Nations condemned it. Thousands of sanctions were imposed. NATO rallied, but Putin pressed on. Understanding why requires understanding what Putin actually believes. Putin has written and spoken extensively about his worldview, and it can be boiled down to a few core beliefs. First, Russia is a great civilization, not just a country. He sees Russia as the heir to 1,000 years of culture, empire, or an Orthodox Christian identity. In his mind, a weak Russia is an aberration of history. A strong Russia is the natural state. Second, the West cannot be trusted. He genuinely believes that Western powers have tried to encircle, weaken, and humiliate Russia since the Soviet collapse. NATO, democracy promotion, sanctions. He sees all of it as a coordinated campaign against Russia. Third, Ukraine is not a separate nation. He has argued in writings that Ukrainians and Russians are essentially one people, divided by historical accidents and Western manipulation. This belief, which Ukrainians fiercely reject, is at the core of his justification for the invasion. Critics, historians, and intelligence analysts say Putin has increasingly isolated himself, surrounded only by yes men who tell him what he wants to hear. They argue he miscalculated badly in Ukraine, expecting a quick victory that never came. But what is clear is this: Putin is not irrational. He is calculating, patient, and he plays a long game. So, who is Vladimir Putin? He is a product of Soviet collapse and Cold War discipline. A man forged in the KGB who watched his empire fall and spent the next 3 decades trying to rebuild it, on his own terms. Whether you see him as a defender of Russian greatness or a threat to global stability depends largely on where you're standing. But what's undeniable is that he is one of the most consequential leaders of our time. And understanding him matters, because the decisions he makes in the Kremlin affect all of us. Energy prices, global security, the future of democracy itself. If you found this video helpful, drop a like. It genuinely helps this channel grow. And if you want to go deeper, I'm going to link some resources in the description below. Subscribe if you're new. We break down complex world events like this every week. I'll see you in the next one.